Hey guys, so I binged Dragon Age Absolution recently, and I really wanted to talk about that because holy shit, I have some thoughts. I do want to start with a quick summary without spoilers in case any one of you haven't watched it yet. So, in short, without spoilers, the show is actually really good. After I watched the first episode, I knew I would like it, and I thought it was gonna be a nice piece of Dragon Age media, but I didn't expect to like it this much. First of all, I think the show really feels like Dragon Age. To me, it wasn't a case of a show that is just pretending to be Dragon Age by throwing a bunch of words in there that fans will recognize. No, it really felt like we were in the Dragon Age universe. Despite the fact that the show takes place in Tevinter, it felt familiar, if that makes sense. The animation overall is great, and I think the art style was a pretty good fit for Dragon Age. And the voice actors did an amazing job on bringing these characters to life. Oh, and also, I did notice the show uses actual sounds and music from the games. Like for example, some of the screams from the monsters that we fight in the game can actually be heard in the series as well. My only main complaint with the show would be its length and the pacing. With only 6 episodes of like 25 minutes each, the show did feel kind of short. Like to me it felt more like I was watching a movie rather than a series, and a lot happened in the span of these 6 episodes. Like, really, a lot. There was a ton of action, which is great, but I would have liked to see a bit more moments of quiet in between the action, so that we as the watcher have a little bit more time to process all the shit that just happened. But I do understand why they would have made it only 6 episodes. Netflix probably just wanted to see if the series would do well first, and also animation is expensive. The show being a little short isn't too big of a deal though. The plot and the characters totally make up for it, and I felt myself getting attached to the characters despite there only being 6 episodes. Even the antagonists/villains were pretty compelling, and they actually seem to have some depth to them. As for the plot, well, I can't say too much about that without getting into spoiler territory, but let's just say there were some pretty interesting twists. I do feel like the show might be a little hard to follow at times for people who are completely new to Dragon Age, but in general, I can say as a Dragon Age fan, I am really impressed. Okay, so before I really go into depth about this, I just want to give you a warning. If you haven't fully watched Absolution yet and want to avoid spoilers, do not watch the rest of this video yet. The things I'm going to talk about will contain extremely major spoilers, and I really recommend you watch and experience the show for yourself first, before watching the rest of this video. If you've already watched it though, or don't care about spoilers, feel free to stay if you want to listen to me ramble. So this bit is mainly just to get my thoughts out there, so while I might summarize parts of the episodes here and there, it's mostly just going to be me talking about things that stood out to me and thought were interesting. I'm going to try to keep this video as structured as possible, but I've never done this type of video before, so I apologize in advance if it seems a bit all over the place. Okay, so I really mean it when I say a lot happened, and I don't really know where to start, so I guess I'll just start with the plot and the characters. So our cast of characters is Miriam, an escaped elven slave from Tevinter. Roland, a Norwegian mercenary and Miriam's best friend. Fairbanks. Yes, the Fairbanks from Inquisition. Quidian, a Kunari mage / everyone's favorite Kunari wife. Saphira, or as most people call her, Hira, a Tevinter mage who served the Inquisition for a time. Lachlan, a dwarven lord of fortune. Razarin, a powerful Tevinter magister. And Tassia, Knight Commander of the Imperial Templar Order. So the plot is basically, our protagonist Miriam and her party are hired by Fairbanks to steal an artifact called the Circulum Infinitus from a Tevinter Magister and deliver it to what's left of the Inquisition, which seems to have been disbanded in the canon of Absolution, which also means that this takes place after Trespasser. The Tevinter Magister who they have to steal the artifact from happens to be Razarin Amasine, the son of Miriam's former master, who she also grew up with. The first episode is called A Woman Unseen and starts out in Avara, where Miriam and Roland are tasked to steal some lyrium from a guarded mage tower. There were a few interesting things in this episode, but nothing too big, I think. The pacing is quite fast, but that's probably because it just mainly sets up the whole story and establishes most of the characters. My summary probably won't do it justice, but the gist of it is that Fairbanks recruits Miriam and Roland and takes them to meet the rest of the party, where he tells them that the Inquisition sent them out on one more mission before they disbanded, which is to steal the Circulum Infinitus, a powerful artifact fueled by blood magic. The party travels to Tevinter and they plan to find a way into the Summer Palace, where the artifact is located. Also, there's a bar fight at some point, which is probably my favorite scene from this episode. So a few sort of interesting things that stood out to me. Not too far into the episode, we learned that Miriam and Hera were in a relationship before Hera left to join the Inquisition, and they mention how the Inquisitor sealed the breach. But rather than calling them the Inquisitor, Miriam calls them the Herald of Andraste, which I thought was interesting. This probably doesn't really mean anything, but it was a bit odd to me as this takes place after Trespasser, so you'd think most people would know them as the Inquisitor now rather than the Herald. But whatever. Another kind of interesting thing that I wanted to point out is that the Summer Palace is built on top of a sealed temple to the old gods. Which, that's literally the only mention of that, but, you know, it's an interesting fact, I guess. In the second episode called Will of the Maker, we meet Razarin and Tasia, and we learn that the Circulum is supposed to bring people back from the dead. But the artifact only works with blood magic, and I will talk more about that in a bit. Razarin wants to find out more about the Circulum Infinitus and how it was created, in the hopes of making the thing work without blood magic. And so he summons a Spirit of Wisdom. At least, Razarin calls it Wisdom, but the spirit calls itself Memory. So it seems that Razarin thought he was summoning a Spirit of Wisdom, but accidentally summoned a Spirit of Memory, unless this is like another type of Wisdom Spirit? Which I don't think is the case, because we haven't really heard of subtypes of spirits from what I can remember. So, assuming Absolution is canon, does this mean this is now a new type of spirit in the lore? Like one we hadn't heard about before? Also, when Razarin pushes it to answer a question it doesn't want to answer, it transforms into a demon that looks like a pride demon. However, right before it transforms, the spirit says, "Memory unheeded can only become enmity." So, I guess Demon of Enmity is a thing now. Also, fun little fact, the demon says that the Circulum was the last and greatest work of Amelia Pavis, so this thing was made by one of Dorian's ancestors. Interesting. Another thing that stood out to me is Razarin and Tasia are in a relationship, but apparently they're keeping it a secret since they act very formal towards each other in front of the guards. Are they just trying to be professional, or does this mean relationships between Templars and Magisters are frowned upon, even in Tevinter? I don't know, but it's interesting and it's not what I expected. Near the end of the episode, things get pretty wild and chaotic, so, I guess, Fairbanks is dead now. Yeah, so that sucks, because I actually really liked him in the show, and I'm kinda sad we only got him for 2 episodes. And like, him stabbing Hera in the back really threw me off, which was the point, I guess, but I was pretty shocked, and I think I literally shouted at my screen when it happened. And I remember just being so confused. Like, of course it all makes sense now, because he seemed to know Hera was up to something. By the way, about that, I've seen people wonder, and I've kind of wondered myself, how Fairbanks knew that Hera was going to betray them. And I personally think the reason he noticed something was off was how easily Hera removed the shield. Because I think the barrier was like probably supposed to be pretty complicated to get rid of. So I think Fairbanks found it odd that she was just able to do it just like that. But yeah, knowing what I know now, that makes me even more sad about his death because he was one of the good guys. He deserved better, man. In the third episode called The Serpent's Coils, our party fights their way through hordes of undead to escape the palace with the Circulum now in their possession. Hera tells Miriam to bring the Circulum to her contact in Kirkwall and the Hanged Man, which is interesting. Knowing what the big twist at the end is, I wonder who her contact was? I'm assuming it wouldn't be a Red Templar unless things are really fucked up in Kirkwall right now, but more on that later. In episode 4 called Those Who Falsely Dream, we find out more about Miriam's past. And it turns out that Miriam and Neb were raised with Razarin as siblings. But in reality, Miriam was trained to be his personal spy / assassin, and Neb was trained to be his bodyguard. Another thing we learn is that Razarin actually failed his harrowing and would have gotten possessed had his mother not interfered. So it's interesting to know that the Tevinter mages also go through the harrowing, apparently. Also, as we can also see in this episode, apparently he uses blood magic to keep Miriam from waking up and is controlling her mind? Dreams? Are they like in the Fade? I don't know. My interpretation of this was that this is some sort of mind control since he doesn't say they're in the Fade and he quite literally says, "We're inside your mind." Man, the Tevinter mages are quite something, huh? I also want to talk about Razarin for a second here because I really like this character as a villain. Like, he is an asshole and was most likely a spoiled child, but he seems to be starting out in an okay place. In the episode where we first see him, he still seems to be kind of an okay guy. He seems willing to work without blood magic, and he doesn't want to sacrifice anybody in order to make the artifact work. The only thing that kind of gives it away at this point that he's not really probably a very stable person is his growing obsession with the Circulum. And Tassia notices this too, and actually worries for him. From the flashbacks, it also seems like Razaran actually cared about Miriam and Neb once, in his own weird way, I suppose. He looked genuinely heartbroken when Neb died, and he allowed Miriam to escape and covered for her. But he became so obsessed with the past and bringing back Neb that it drove him mad, even willing to go as far as using blood magic to get into Miriam's mind and manipulate her, which is just yikes. He believed that with both Neb and Miriam back, he would be able to live the perfect little life that they had in his mind when they were kids, and in the end he was willing to do whatever it took to achieve that goal. I felt like he just really wanted to be in control of Neb and Miriam, which is why he gets so angry when Miriam refuses to go back with him. He is an absolute crazy person who starts out as someone that seemingly wants to improve the winter without bloodshed, but ends up being driven mad by his obsession with the past, and wanting his perfect little life. All of this makes him a very compelling villain though. In episode 5, An Altar of Fire, we get the first hints of Hera's true intentions, as she seems very focused on her revenge on Tevinter, even admitting she wants it all to burn, the bad and the good. From her story we learn that the Venatori might have been around before Corypheus, which would not be unlikely. We're not really sure exactly when Absolution takes place, only that it's after Trespasser, and since this was the last mission the Inquisition gave them before they disbanded, makes me think it's not been that long since Trespasser. Assuming Hera is somewhere in her early to mid-20s, her father getting burned by the Venatori must have happened way before Corypheus even got freed from his prison, maybe even before the Fifth Blight, since Hera looks to be pretty young in her flashbacks. Like, to me she looks around 5 to maybe 6 or 7 years old. Also, could I just point out that Hera ticks all the boxes for a proper Dragon Age betrayal? It's always the mages, guys. Always the mages. Another thing I found interesting is that Razaran stores a spell in Neb's hand that Neb then later uses on Miriam. Maybe this is only possible because the spirit inside Neb's body is bound to Razaran, but imagine the possibilities if this is possible for living people as well. Like, just imagine your mage storing a spell like that in the hand of a warrior and then have your warrior rush into a pack of enemies and then releasing the spell, making them all fly. I kinda want that in Dreadwolf now. Okay, so the last episode is called Prince of Salvation and has quite a lot of stuff I want to talk about. Which, the first thing we've actually seen in an earlier episode, but flying mage discs? Can we have this in Dreadwolf as well, please? It doesn't even have to be a combat mechanic, it can just be something we use to move around in the world, like, I just want to fly. So, Razaran finds Neb's body has been decapitated, and this dude just fucking magically mends the head back onto the body, and then he summons a shade, and he, like, absorbs the essence into his staff, and uses his staff to put the demon inside Neb's body. All this using blood magic, of course. Oh, and then he also kills an innocent Chantry priest, and uses the blood of the corpses on the battlefield to casually mind control the dragon. Yeah, he's really lost it at this point. And all of this while poor Tassia watches the man she loves slip over the edge. I am just gonna say here, this poor woman did nothing wrong. She was just doing her job, and she didn't want any of this shit. Tassia deserved better, man. I feel so bad for her. Okay, so now I want to talk about the Circulum Infinitus and its ability to bring back people from the dead. So in the last episode we see that Razaran uses the blood of 3 people and the Factana blood from the dragon in order to power the thing. And we see it open what I'm assuming to be like a tear or a portal between the real world and the Fade, and we see a ghostly looking Neb emerge from the opening. Now I'm wondering, is this actually Neb's soul? Or is this similar to a Cole's situation where a spirit was so interested in a mortal being that it took its form and memories? Either way, whether it was a spirit or Neb's actual soul, it seemed to know what was going on and chose to destroy the body rather than resurrect it. In Inquisition with Justinia and the Fate, the spirit or soul question was left up to our own interpretation, but I do get the feeling that this case is different. What we currently know from the lore is once a soul has passed through the veil, it cannot be brought back, but according to Razaran, the Circulum is supposed to be the exception to this rule. Plus, it is powered by blood magic, and usually blood magic can achieve things that normal magic can't, so If Absolution is canon, which I would find hard to believe it isn't at this point, this means that this is a pretty big thing for the lore of Dragon Age, especially if there is a way to make it work without blood magic. And this is all assuming Razarin is even correct about the circle and being able to bring people back from the dead, by the way. And now I want to talk about the last few scenes in the show, of which some are probably also some of the most powerful and heartbreaking ones, in my opinion at least. So there is the last scene between Hera and Miriam, where Miriam is asking her to please not let her hate of Tevinter infect her, so that the two of them can start over and live a happy life together. Miriam is completely ready to let go of the past despite everything she's been through. She just wants to put it all behind her and move on with her life, even forgiving Hera for her betrayal. But Hera is too determined to finish what she started, and her drive for revenge is bigger than her love for Miriam. She made her choice, and so does Miriam when she decides to let go. Figuratively and literally when she takes off the scarf that Hera gave to her, and decides to focus on stopping Hera from destroying Tevinter. And I can't help but get a little bit of Trespasser Solo villain vibes from this scene. More specifically if you choose the redeem option where your Inquisitor says something along the lines of "Our love will endure" in Elven, to which Solus responds with a very dramatic "I wish it could, Vanan." Here in Absolution, Miriam asks Hera to say that she is more important than revenge, to which Hera responds with "I wish I could." I mean, these scenes aren't really a one-to-one comparison, but I couldn't help but spot some similarities. And I liked it. And then right before the party gets ready to go to Kirkwall, we get a few seconds of Tassia crying while holding Razarin's body in her arms. And this moment was so heartbreaking to see. All this time she was so worried for him, and then her worst fear came true when he lost his mind, and now he is dead. Despite everything she did, even after multiple warnings and asking him to be careful, she could not protect him from himself. The shot also shows Miriam's scarf, and the way Tassia looks up towards the camera makes me think we're going to see her again if there is ever to be a second season. I'm also getting the feeling that she doesn't fully realize it was Razarin's own madness that pretty much got him killed, and I think she partly blames Miriam for everything that happened. I have no idea though, this is just what I got from this scene. Okay, and then of course there is the big shocking reveal at the end that I think none of us was really expecting. Meredith is back, guys! And apparently she is somewhere in Kirkwall, and there are also Red Templars, and this is not concerning at all! Also, this is now the second bad guy that Hawke failed to kill. Nice job, Hawke. Nice job. All jokes aside, holy shit, I really wasn't expecting that. When Hera mentioned the Crimson Knight, for a second I was like, Meredith? But then I was like, nah, they couldn't do that, right? But I guess they can. I'm not unhappy with this, by the way. I actually really like that they did this. So now one of my biggest questions is, how bad are things in Kirkwall right now? And where in Kirkwall is this? To me it looks like a throne room of some sort, but it's not the one in Viscount's Keep because the two rooms look completely different. And it would be weird if this was just in the throne room. Unless things are really fucked in Kirkwall. Also, the lore on where Meredith's petrified body is kind of all over the place. So in Trespasser, Varric writes to the Inquisitor that Meredith has finally been moved out of the gallows, but in Knight Errant she is still there. And then there's the version of her in the Black Emporium, so I guess at this point we're not really sure where she really is. But I would say that what Varric says is probably more likely to be canon, since that's in the actual game. And that would probably also make the most sense for the scene, because this is obviously not in the gallows. So now the question is, why would she need the Circulum? At this point, my best guess is that she would use it to resurrect herself so that she can wage war on Tevinter, which is also why she needs Hera, because she is a mage and probably the one that would perform the ritual for her. Though I would not be surprised that if Meredith got what she needed, she won't hesitate to turn on Hera and kill her now that she no longer needs her. Oh, I got so many questions still. And they've totally set this up for a second season. If they aren't going to answer these questions in Dreadwolf, that is. On the one hand, I would maybe love to see some of these characters in the game, but on the other, I actually like that this could be its own thing. Thing is, have they already started working on the second season, or were they waiting to see how the show would do first? If I remember correctly, they said that this show took around 2 or 3 years to make, so I'd say that if they've already started working on a potential second season, that there's a chance that it will release before the new game. Though if they haven't, then I would surely hope we get the game first, because I hope we really don't have to wait another 2 or 3 years for the next game. Please, BioWare. Anyway, these are my thoughts and theories for Dragon Age Absolution. I really hope you were able to follow, and I'm sorry if this was kind of all over the place, but I just wrote down everything I could think of. I'm sure I've missed a few things, so feel free to write a comment and let me know. Would love to have some discussions about possible theories also, by the way. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, let me know by liking this video. Or leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on Dragon Age Absolution. That's it for now though. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.